A company preserving the planet with carbon credits and an asset management firm have created the world's first carbon-neutral asset fund. I sat down with Moss Earth and One River Asset Management to see what it's all about.
You can think of One River as the solution provider to clients. So when a client has a portfolio problem, they come to One River and say, here's the problem we're trying to solve, help us solve it. And that came to us through digital as well. So the question became, okay, we would like to get institutional grade exposure to the digital space. How do we do it? What are best practices? Can we build an infrastructure that resembles the types of infrastructure we would see in liquid markets?
Moss.Earth. It's a global company based in many countries now, originally, set up in Brazil, that is one of the leading, if not the largest, carbon platform in the world. What we do is we buy carbon credits wholesale from the leading forestry conservation projects in the Amazon forest, and we sell retail to individuals, small and medium businesses, and large corporates.
So a lot of our time is spent just listening to clients. They're very engaged in the digital space to understand more, understand how it integrates their portfolios, what problems they can solve. And the common thing that kept coming up was, well, Bitcoin is an energy hog. And then there's confusion as to what it means to be an energy hog and what it means to be an emitter, right? And we know that over time, you could easily come to a crystallization that Bitcoin is ultimately a source of good on the renewable side, but we'll see that that's a long horizon view. In the meantime, we're saddled with this obvious challenge of having an enormous amount of energy consumption and emissions associated with it. The nature of the credits that Luis and Moss Earth are generating, how those are tokenized, almost the humanization of the credit at some level.
The token, the MCO2 token, represents one carbon credit, which itself represents 1 ton of avoided CO2 emission. It's not as expensive or as much of an issue as people think. So for every $40,000 Bitcoin, you have to spend 10 bits. That's $40 to offset it. And its only function is, you can either hold on to it or you can consume it. And by consuming it, the holder transfers the token to the Moss website, and that token gets burnt, and the corresponding carbon offset, in the global registry gets canceled. And in return, the person gets a global certificate that proves that pollution has been mitigated, via the work of environmental project. Now, the catch or the interesting thing about carbon credits is that they're a digital commodity. So just like wine, you can bring this thing, you can sit on it, and in 100 to 1,000 years, it'll still be the same. So you can sort of open the wine and drink it. You can also just burn the token and consume that carbon credit in many years in the future, because the asset doesn't expire. And another thing that you can do as well is to buy, and if the price goes higher, sell it at a higher price. But the main function is really for compensation. That's where 95% of the demand is. Large corporates buying these credits and these tokens to burn them and then get the corresponding international certificate that proves that they mitigated. That's the value for them, getting certified that their emissions were mitigated or offset somehow. We estimate that around 33 million trees are going to be saved by One River's acquisitions of carbon credit. Bitcoin, the numbers range from 50 to 60 million tons of carbon per year. If those are acquired, in carbon credits to offset that, we're talking about $500 million being channeled to environmental projects. And if that goes to forestry projects, wow, that's a lot of trees. We're talking about billions and billions of trees.
The remarkable thing, and the reason why I think Bitcoin's being held to a higher standard, is that it's new. So we don't know what it's going to become yet. So there's all sorts of speculation as to how it'll be used and where it'll be used, and is it money, is it not money, and so on and so forth. But it's new. The thing we can all agree upon is that these are still nascent markets. The institutions are not deeply engaged yet. So So as a result, that gives Bitcoin a massive advantage.
I see a lot of people focusing on the absolute emission of carbon for crypto, saying, oh, Bitcoin emits more carbon than Holland, than Argentina. And I think it's my criticism to that way of thinking is, you shouldn't think on an absolute basis. You should think on a relative basis. Bitcoin and crypto are way more efficient than, the traditional system. The traditional system, of course, requires, an X number of ATMs and buildings with people working, to make the transactions work. These people use cars to drive and planes to meet, and that generates a lot of carbon. Of course, paper money generates a lot of carbon because it's paper, right? You gotta cut trees. And the math, is that crypto emits 1/3 less per dollar than the traditional system. And as we saw, the offsetting is quite cheap. So it's, in a way, it's also cheap, to take a shot, sort of a cheap shot at crypto to say that it emits. If you're just looking on an absolute basis, you're not, really comparing with the efficiency of the existing system.
This is Decrypted. I am not Eddie Vanderwalt. For more content like this, please follow us on your favorite platforms.
Thanks for watching Bloomberg Quicktake Now. Subscribe to our channel to see the biggest stories the moment they happen from around the world. And tune in to our 24/7 live stream for global news coverage, interviews, deep dives, shows, and documentaries on the stories you care about most.